Good evening, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jonathan Lipp, director of the Big Apple Film Festival. Thank you all for being here. So tonight's conference focuses on distribution. So I'd like to introduce our panelists. We have Graham Fine, we have Nick Savva, we have Christina Rea, and we have Art Skapinski. So if you all can come on down. All right, so I'm going to begin by asking each of our panelists to tell us, well, first you can go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us which company you work for. Okay.
Hello, my name is Nick Savva. I run Giant Pictures, which is a digital film and documentary distribution company based here in New York and in Los Angeles. We distribute about currently around 50 movies and docs per year to all of the major digital platforms, Apple TV, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Tubi, Pluto, etc. And I'm happy to be here.
I'm Graham Fine. I am representing the film sales company where I am one of the co-heads of acquisition. We are a international sales company. We work in both documentary and narrative film, English language and foreign language. We work in kind of all different levels. We work on the festival front, helping you to get festival play. We work on the digital front as well, helping to, sign originals deals for films and also just service films to iTunes, Amazon, and Google and the like. And we do help films to find traditional distribution with big companies, small companies, and everything in between.
Hi, I'm Christina Rea. I'm the head of education at Seed and Spark, which is a crowdfunding and streaming platform for film. And a big part of what I do is educate filmmakers on how to build partnerships for their own active self-distribution.
Hi, I'm Art Skapinski from Monarch Films. I'm president of the company. We represent titles both for TV and digital around the world. We place our content not only on domestic TV channels, but international TV channels. And digitally, we're on Amazon, Hulu, Tubi, MX Player, Distro TV. Internationally, on some of those, we're starting to develop stream channels in addition to have our content as VOD. Internationally, we're doing similar things on Basebone, Africa XP, iFlix, CLA, many, many others. And we're starting to develop channels now for some of them on their streaming platforms. And we're developing an app, which will be out later this year, which will be a content app. It'll be an SVOD content app initially, which will probably eventually go to AVOD. My library is approximately 500 plus hours of content, 125 feature films, 75 documentaries, and 20 factual series.
All right, thank you. So let me ask first each one of our speakers if you could tell us what should a filmmaker be thinking about in terms of distribution before they even go into production, if they even should be even thinking about that prior to production. So we'll start with Nick.
I definitely think you should be thinking about distribution as early as possible. It's critical to have an idea about who the audience for the film is going to be, which is kind of an obvious thing to say, but a lot of times I find when speaking with filmmakers, they're not that clear on that. In particular, which specific platforms nowadays that the audience for the film is kind of living on and consuming on, both in terms of where people are reading about films, the media outlets which are relevant to the particular audience, as well as the more specific platforms where people are consuming, buying, streaming films. And then one of the other things that we find sometimes kind of gets left to the side is working on marketing materials during the shoot, especially having a proper stills photographer on set, or even if it's a doc, like at particular parts in the production process really makes a huge difference when you come around to market a film, and often those assets are not there when you get into distribution, and then it's difficult to go back and get them.
So for sales, I would say the biggest obvious thing is commerciality, which doesn't mean you need to be like aesthetically a big Hollywood movie. It just means there needs to be something about the film that is commercially viable. So whether that's going to be that it gets into a huge film festival that gives it that kind of badge of having been taste made for certain people in the industry, or whether it means it has, if it's a narrative film, if it has somebody recognizable, whether that's somebody who's a regular on a TV show or a big name star. And if it's a documentary, I would say it gets a little bit more gray of what's commercial, but something that is relevant without having been overdone at this point. So if you're making a documentary on a subject that is in the headlines, making sure that you have kind of a unique view of it. And I would say also, I agree with a lot of what you said, Nick, that you need to have a lot of those things in line before you would think you do, so that when it gets to that point, you're ready to go. And then the biggest other thing is having a sense of what the festival timeline looks like. So for the bigger market festivals where people are actually doing deals, you want to make sure that your film is going to be ready in time to start showing people the film before those festivals, get a sales agent on before those festivals, have a cut that you're comfortable with to submit to those festivals, and that you have everything in place so that when you are selected for your world premiere to be at one of these festivals, you have all your materials ready to go and aren't scraping by for money to just get your film out there.
I would also add having a clear set of goals out of your film, like what is it you're actually trying to accomplish with it, other than getting it seen. There is no one size fits all with distribution. Every project is unique, and there's a different strategy behind every film. And you kind of have to think about, like, what is it that you actually want? Is it to make money? Is it to get it seen? Is it to build exposure in a specific genre? Is it to change the world? Are you trying to affect policy change? There are different avenues that will help you accomplish different things. I don't really know of one avenue that accomplishes all of those things. So really deciding for yourself what makes sense for your film. And I also recommend being realistic about what's possible for your project by looking at films that are similar from the genre, the budget, sort of the style, and seeing what happened to those films so that you can kind of think about what distribution actually looks like, what a success story could look like for you.
I would echo a lot of what they said in terms of marketing. Look at what's actually, I just came back from the American film market. You have to understand what the marketplace is. If you're making a genre film, look at what the marketplace is. And in that way, if you're making an action or horror film, allocate in your budget, you can pick up a small name, a Tom Sizemore, a Mike Madsen, for that kind of genre. If you're making a family film, you can pick up an Ed Asner or others for that kind of genre. It adds a name. It really elevates you in terms of your possible sales. Also, if you are making those kind of films, understand your budget limitations. I get offered films, for example, great sci-fi ideas, but they're trying to do things that you would do on a $5 million budget on $100,000, and it shows. So keep in mind what your budget restrictions are. Further, on materials, make sure you come in with an M&E track. If you don't have an M&E track, you've cut yourself off from dub markets, very lucrative dub markets like Germany, France, Italy, and Spain, because they're only going to play it in their home languages. If they don't have an M&E track, they can't dub it, and they're not going to subtitle it in those territories.
So can each of you speak a little bit about what a filmmaker can do to help the distribution process once they've already secured a distribution deal? Because I know there are certain filmmakers that, they sign a distribution deal and then they're done with it. They move on to their next project. Like a distributor has it now, I'm good. So I'm going to move on out to my next film, but that's not necessarily always the case. Sometimes it's a good idea for the filmmaker to be involved as well. I don't know, can you speak to that? We'll start with Nick.
Thank you. Yeah. I think that's a good question because it speaks to a real trend at the moment to what's being called self-distribution or creative or hybrid distribution, which is effectively just that the marketplace now, especially with regard to digital platforms, is there's a lot more control that the filmmakers have over their own distribution. There's a lot more flexibility in terms of the routes to market. And what it means is that filmmakers can split rights frequently. So, for example, within the US, within the domestic territory, there could be a theatrical release, which was a self-release or which was a service release by any number of kind of theatrical releasing outfits, and then you could split off digital rights, etc. And then often in those kinds of situations, the filmmaker has pretty much direct control over the project management of the whole release and the entire marketing campaign, which marketing and PR agencies to hire, what the ultimate creative assets like the trailer, poster, and other things, how they're going to look. So I think that nowadays, even just in the last 2 or 3 years, there's become more and more of an opportunity for filmmakers to have much more direct kind of access to their own distribution. I think that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, and I would add to that, just because of where I'm seeing the process from the sales point of view, it's also helpful to have those conversations before you sign on with a sales agent or anybody that's going to be not part of the creative team, to make sure that they understand what you're looking for from the film, which can be anything from what kind of deals you're looking for, so they don't waste their time getting deals you're not going to want to enter into. But also things like if you are obsessed with the festival poster you made, and that's the whole lifeblood of the film, and if a distributor changes that, it's not your film anymore, you want to make sure somebody's going to be going to bat for you on that. And that, if a distributor has a very specific idea of what a digital poster should look like, because they know what gets clicks, especially for a genre film, you want to make sure that, speak before you think it's time to speak, just so that everyone's listening, and just remember that everybody's working for you. And so if you can just make sure that is respected throughout the deal process, then it'll come into play later that they do.
I'll just say that currently most distribution deals that filmmakers get, and also most filmmakers that are getting distribution deals, I would say most are not worth taking. That's just the reality that we live in right now. You could probably accomplish more on your own with different partnerships that don't take rights from you. So that's just something to keep note of. And so I think going into any kind of strategy for distribution, any sort of negotiation with a company, the best thing you can do is to do as much research as possible. And that includes knowing the company that you might be partnering with, knowing what they've done before, talking to filmmakers who have worked with them before. Many will speak to you privately, if not publicly. Really just do your research. Research is the best thing that you can do. And if you get in partnership with a worthy distribution company, then they will appreciate how much you come to the table with. Like, you have clear goals, and you know that they can accomplish those goals because you've done your homework.
Well, they've said a lot of very positive things and good ways to work. One thing I would say is a lot of people, what I find a lot of times is filmmakers make their film. They don't have a sales agent yet. They don't have any place to put it yet, but they're running around doing promotion. And that's great for a festival opportunity. But if you just have your film and you don't have distribution at that point, that's not the time to do that kind of promotion. Time it with your distributor, if your distributor does work with you, and make sure it's a kind of give and take involvement. I mean, we like to give, if we have something up on digital, we give all the links to our producers so that they can do some of their context. One thing that we're picking up is a series called The Battalion, which is 195 episodes about firemen. It's done all over North America, embedded in fire departments, fighting fires, doing rescues, and just life inside the fire department in general. Now, he's coming in with a database of thousands of firemen and fire companies. So we have a natural place for us to market to. But he's going to do his own marketing based on after we get it up on digital platforms. So to drive that audience to it. Now, if you have a natural audience with your film, identify it, but work with your distributor to drive the people there, particularly in a digital situation.
I'm curious what each of you think about the theatrical market now, specifically for independent films. Is it worth it anymore to even go theatrical? We'll start with Nick. We'll just.
Yes, I think it is. I think that the way I think about indie film releasing nowadays is with not so much a theatrical strategy leading it, but what I would call like a live event strategy. And that can be a mix of a traditional or non-traditional theatrical release, ongoing festival screenings. You can achieve a lot with a really focused festival strategy. And also, potentially live screenings, event screenings, that kind of thing. I think that with a lot of indie films, all of these kind of live opportunities for audiences to sit and experience the film are very important. Not just for building audience, but also building buzz and press and marketing opportunities around the film. So I still think it's crucial, but I think that the numbers will tell you that traditional theatrical releasing on many independent films is, financially speaking, a loss leader at best.
Yeah, we're always super upfront with filmmakers that they should never expect a theatrical campaign, whether it's self-booked or with a distributor, just because of kind of everything you just said, Nick, that it's all shifting, and if you can get it, that's great. If you have a budget where you can pay an independent booker and you're okay with however that kind of hashes out, that's great, but we would never promise it. But the asterisk to that is for any film, but really narrative films, especially people with films with talent in it, we make sure that we're super honest with filmmakers, but if that is something they want to push for, we make sure that in all of our conversations with buyers, we make them really explicitly say what their potential theatrical campaign would look like, or ask them to be honest if they don't think it's possible.
I think it really comes down to your audience and knowing how your audience behaves. Like I said earlier, there isn't one strategy that fits every film. And so, I work in crowdfunding with Seed and Spark, and a big part of what we do when we're encouraging filmmakers to build their audience is to ask their audience where they watch content, how they watch content. And if no one that you speak to that wants to watch your movie says that they go to the theater to watch independent films, then theatrical doesn't necessarily make sense for the film that you've made or are trying to make. On the other hand, maybe they do, and it does make sense, but you really don't know that answer until you speak to your audience and learn from them. And so it isn't about trying to do what you think is successful. It's about meeting your audience where they're at and making sure that they will see your movie.
Again, I'm going to echo a lot of what they said, but I know that every filmmaker, where they first fell in love with movies was at the movie theater. And so they want to replicate that experience for their film. But it isn't just simply putting your film, getting a theater to host your film. They require a substantial, in a city like New York, it'll be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in terms of a advertising budget that's guaranteed to put yourself probably into a 100-seat theater at the Quad or one of the other theaters. If you can play at that range, go ahead. But, just realize that more people will see your film in one night on a Netflix or a Hulu or even an Amazon Prime than they ever will in a small 2-week theatrical run at a 100-seat theater downtown.
In the world of social media now, as distributors, when you're approached by a filmmaker seeking a distribution deal, do you look at their social media? Will you say, okay, this movie's pretty good, let me look at their Instagram, and if they have 100,000 people following them, you're like, whoa, what do we got here? Clearly there's an audience. I mean, how does that work? Do you guys...
Shall I? Why not break with convention? I think it's very important. Yes, we look at what the wattage is of the social media accounts of the filmmaker, the talent. We talk to the filmmakers about what I would call a list of champions or influencers around the film who can help to get the word out there. This is in the bucket of, I guess we would call it earned media. Am I right? From people who know more about marketing than I do, earned media can be totally instrumental in the success of the film. So yeah, it's a critical avenue. The other thing is advertising on social media platforms is way cheap. If you compare it, say, to what was being presented as a New York P&A spend, boosting posts or straight up advertising on Facebook or Instagram, really for a few $1,000s can be highly beneficial and also extremely targetable to a very granular level in terms of who the audience is. The other thing is use of partnerships. So a lot of times when we're working on documentaries, which are issue-oriented, filmmakers will come with various partnerships and NGOs and organizations that are around the theme and around the what the film is about, and those organizations can have thousands, maybe even millions of people on their mailing lists to be able to book in a guaranteed e-blast or even just a post around after the film is available on digital platforms, not before, is extremely helpful.
Yeah, I would echo most of that, and I would also add that the built-in champions thing can be kind of risky sometimes. For a narrative film, if you are going solely off metrics and you're choosing somebody that you think one post is going to give so many eyes to your film, if that is all that's going for the film, and then that person either becomes less relevant or does something to fall out of the good graces of humanity, then you are not screwed, but you're in a tough position, because if that was your whole selling point, that can be pretty difficult to overcome. And yeah, I would say another thing is kind of going off of that. One is to build an audience from the start, and by the start I mean not while you're in production, unless you have like a star in every move they make is going to be paid attention to, and so people are going to put this on every list of most anticipated films. But when you're on the festival circuit, make sure people know where to follow you, or make sure they know that you have special whatever on your social media profiles. And when people say, when are you going to release the film? When can I see it? When can I show it to people on iTunes? If you just say to them, follow us on social media, we'll post about it then it does a 1-2 punch of it inflates what your follower count is, but it also tells people where to find the film so that audience stays throughout. And then the third thing that I was going to say is, I'm not going to waste our time trying to think of it. I'll let you go and then say it if I remember it.
Speaking for Seed and Spark specifically, so we're unique in that we're a streaming platform that is non-exclusive. We don't take any rights from you. And so we really care about underrepresented voices and putting out stories that aren't seen in the industry at large. And so we care about story first and foremost, and offering unique films to our subscriber base. That said, it is a question that we ask when people submit their films to us. We look for their social media, not really for a number count, but more about just activity, to see that you are active and that you are, trying to build an audience for the film, so that we could, get people coming to our platform to watch the other films as well that exist on it.
On the TV side, we're more essentially a B2B business, because we're licensing the TV stations, and they're going to do their marketing locally. On the digital side, of course, it's a lot of what they said. I mean, to see, first of all, if there's an active audience out there for it, in terms of who's the film made for. Is there an audience you can tap into and use the existing social media that your producers brought into it. You know, sometimes producers come in with a very active and far-reaching, social platform. And further, it's important to kind of find a hook for a film and a reason for people to see it. And that's really a kind of you need something to offer to get people to click if you're talking on a digital side.
And I did just remember what I was going to say, which is that with all of this said, and this is all true, especially if you're a documentary filmmaker and this all sounds either foreign to you, or you wouldn't do a good job with it, or you don't think there's anything, social media marketable about the film, from a sales point of view, we will work on films that have no digital presence. We'll leave it up to the distributor to take care of that for the filmmakers if that's something that they're set up to do. So I would say it's not worth forcing if you don't think you can do a good job of it, because then that stuff exists online, quote unquote, forever, and you can't really get back what your branding around your film is. So if you don't feel like you're going to be the best person to do it, then it might not be worth it.
Also, just to piggyback on that, it's very easy to fake follower counts. Yeah. It's not worth paying for. What we're looking for is the activity, is the engagement from an audience, not just a number of followers.
Christina, Seed and Spark, I'm assuming some people are familiar with it, but I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit about how it differs from some of the other platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. I believe you have sort of a distribution thing in there.
So for crowdfunding, there are a lot of things that make us different from the other platforms. For one thing, we're storytelling focused. So while the other platforms tend to make they have a lot of projects that are focused on tech, like gadgets, product-based. We're storytelling focused. We started with filmmakers, and we have the highest success rate in the industry. It's 80% compared to Kickstarter's 37% in film. It's twice any other platform. We are the only platform that gives you personalized feedback on every single campaign, which is part of our success rate. There's someone who looks over your stuff and gives you feedback on how to improve and do better. We look at your strategy. We tell you if it's viable for you to raise your goal. My job is to teach free workshops around the country. That's also part of our success rate because we offer free education. We partner with film festivals to offer waivers to successful campaigns that hit certain milestones on our platform, as well as like discounts on post services and free consultations. Those are called our filmmaker rewards. We have the lowest fees in the industry. So on the crowdfunding side, there's a lot that makes us different. But then the other factor is that because we're very focused on creator sustainability, we're not just trying to help you raise funds for one project. We want you to have a sustainable career. We're also a streaming platform where we put out content to subscribers. It's pay what you can to be a subscriber, starting at $3 per month. And for that price, you get unlimited access to over 300 titles. We're constantly adding to our library, and filmmakers make money per minute watched. It's a 50-50 split of the subscriber pool, and the average payout is 20 cents per minute, which if you compare that to, for instance, Amazon's 4 cents per hour, it's a pretty big deal. I can tell you I'm a filmmaker as well, and I have my second feature on both Amazon Prime and the Seed and Spark Cinema, and those payouts are very different. And so we really want, it's sort of like the opportunity for a full circle model. You've built an audience through a crowdfunding campaign on our platform, and you can come full circle to stream on our platform to much of that same audience, as well as the audience of all the other projects that have crowdfunded.
All right. Art, you mentioned your business to business. You sell to television networks. What type of projects should go to you if a filmmaker? What type of projects?
Well, on the narrative side, I mean, for something that would sell to TV, it really does have to have a recognizable name, or it has to have come out of one of the major festivals for a network to be interested in it. The kind of people we sell are HBO, Showtime, Stars, Reels, and internationally, lots of channels internationally. On the documentary side, it has to be something that's going to play worldwide. It has to be something that's relatable to worldwide audiences. It may be a lovely documentary, but if the story is too American, it's going to be limited to an American audience. The foreign buyers just are not interested in that. If it doesn't have, if it's a world affair, let's say something about Trump or something about, fentanyl or something about immigration, it may have resonance internationally.
Nick, you were talking about like eventizing a theatrical screening. What are some ways to go about that if you really want to make an event around a theatrical screening?
Use of talent is a big one. We recently worked on a film, which is a documentary called Love, Antosha. It has an excellent pedigree, which is another really important thing in distribution, by the way, that we didn't talk about. But it has that kind of provenance from the premiere at Sundance, some really kind of interesting and well-known filmmakers who made the film and who are around the film, as well as a lot of talent who are in it. The film is a biographical documentary about the actor Anton Yelchin, who tragically died about 3 years ago. And the filmmakers eventized the release very well by, first of all, they had excellent bookings, theatrical bookings. They were in the Landmark chain nationally, which is a real, again, a kind of prestigious point. They had a lot of talent, and the filmmakers themselves appearing in person at the screenings made a huge difference to the opening weekend per screen averages. They also had really excellent reviews, including New York Times Critics' Pick, and these guys kind of had everything going for them, actually. They did a really amazing job with their theatrical. A lot of the things we were talking about with social media kind of came into that. But yeah, I think it's about not just throwing a film into theaters, but supporting it with in-persons, talent, potentially using some of the on-demand theatrical tools that are out there, that kind of thing.
All right.
Could I speak to that for a second? So we had a film that crowdfunded on our platform called Bite Me, and the producer, Naomi McDougall-Jones, her first feature, she was very unsatisfied with the distribution deal that they got for that film, so she rejected all the ones that came for this film, and after premiering at Cinequest, they decided not to do any more festivals. They did their own kind of tour of their film, where they got into an RV for 3 months and screened in, I think, 30 cities. I think it was 50 screenings in 30 cities, and they were not having like one night only events where you could see the film in this city only once, and there was also a party with it and some like other little layers of kind of making it very unique to that specific film. And they were also simultaneously streaming on our platform and transactional VOD on other platforms, and we're kind of using the momentum of this tour to try and drive sales on digital. And what's really cool is that they released a YouTube series. It's 12 episodes, where after every city they would do a rundown of like how much they spent and how much they made, and they were just extremely transparent. And it was a lot of partnering with theaters that were really interested, like art house theaters that were really interested in local arts, and I believe most of them were just like ticket price splits, so they didn't have to put up money up front for a lot of the theaters. So I really recommend that you look this up on YouTube, their series, and you can find it through Bite Me on our crowdfunding platform. It'll link to the YouTube series. But it's what I think is a way to make kind of theatrical viable in our current ecosystem.
Graham, just you mentioned about social media ads and targeting your audience. Have you found Facebook, Instagram ads to be successful for filmmakers?
So for us, we don't have like an in-house marketing team. Any marketing we're doing is just to help filmmakers self-distribute. So the experience that we really have with it are films that have done a really great festival push, have that pedigree, whether it is things like talent and big name reviews or just a built-in really loyal base, especially with films that are about, a really successful film for us was one about rock climbing. There is a huge community, and they were able to build that up as they went along. And so they were marketing to their built-in followers and then to like the followers of the followers and people who cared about the subject. And they didn't have to spend that much money on it. But yeah, I would say it's not something that we really handle in-house, so I don't feel I'm the most qualified to talk about it. But in that sense, it's just, it made sense for them to do it. And so we helped them by just giving them the links they needed to the different platforms, approving of kind of the language they were using to make sure it was consistent with the way we'd been messaging the film.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for any of the panelists? Feel free to raise your hand. Okay, let's start right there. Go ahead.
How you doing? My name is Frank. I understand about Amazon Prime. I had a show on Amazon Prime and I got paid practically nothing. I got good exposure. I'm currently in post-production of a horror film. Hopefully it should be out, should be ready by March. Question, should I go towards the film festivals that you guys say to try to build up the reviews and stuff like that? Or should I just go more geared towards a sales rep or just go straight to distribution to go towards more streaming where I can get more of a market?
So I'll just say for us, I'm obviously biased because I'm a sales agent, but we've found that genre films specifically do really well when they premiere at a genre festival. There are a bunch nationally and internationally that have built-in audiences who, if you're really a hardcore genre fan, you know that these festivals are where the best stuff is coming out of. And so in that way, you don't have to spend much money to get your film into that festival, and then you're guaranteeing you have an audience built in. But if you have a certain level of talent in the film, it sometimes can make sense to just approach buyers directly, which we've done before, but it's been with like big names where we know people will flock to it and the buyers agree, and that's why they sign on.
I mean, in the horror genre, that's a genre that the fans really are always consistent. Horror fans are horror fans are horror fans. They'll always turn out to see something. The question is you have to get your film across to as many outlets for you to potentially monetize your film. One of the things we're trying to do now is with streaming is we're creating channels. One of the things we're creating not only on Roku, but we'll be creating it on digital platforms and maybe eventually an app, is something we're calling Monarch's Nightmares, where we're taking a lot of horror films and we're mixing them with paranormal and supernatural and some sci-fi and some zombies to kind of create an overall streaming channel to drive people to see a lot of these films. But, you know, but even in those streaming opportunities, you can also be offering the film as a VOD and as a TV sale, because there are, you know, a lot of opportunities for horror pictures, and not only domestically but internationally.
We got a question over there, right in the middle there. Yes.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Shannon. I'm assuming you all are talking mostly about feature films, and if not, can you speak a little bit about shorts and where they might fit in with distribution?
So as a sales company, it is super rare that we will work on shorts, with the main thought process being the amount of money that you're going to get from a short is so low compared to a feature that we don't want to take anything from that pot, and any distribution you can find can probably be found on your own and you don't need a sales agent. But there have been instances where we think a short has Oscar potential, or, you know, Netflix is buying shorts now, but it seems to be really very specific mandate. So we typically don't work on shorts.
So for Seed and Spark, we actually have a lot of shorts on our platform, and they tend to do really well because we put them into playlists around specific themes or types of representation or anything related to like what's happening in the world, and people digest those very easily. Like you can kind of set up a playlist and then watch a couple at a time and come back. And so it's an option if you want to submit and look into it. It's free to submit to our platform. That said, as a filmmaker myself, I always come back to the goals that I have for a short, and profit is very rarely what I'm after. It's really exposure and to build an audience for my next feature. So I usually will release them for free online and choose instead to kind of partner with platforms that like promote shorts. We're getting an exclusive premiere of a short, just an embed of your link, or getting even just kind of there are places like Shorts TV that pay a little bit of money for a short. It's non-exclusive. If you work in genre, as I do as well, like there's something like Alter where they license stuff and it's released for free, but it's on their channels, and there is a little bit of money there and a ton of exposure. So like looking into those, I think, are better for shorts. That said, you could totally look into Seed and Spark as well.
Yeah, some of those deals you could do by yourself. I mean, we don't carry shorts. I think really shorts should be viewed from your perspective as kind of your calling card for financing of a bigger feature. So obviously you have to keep your budget in mind.
I've seen some shorts on YouTube that have millions of views, and I guess if you do their Google ad deal or whatever, I mean, that's an option. It doesn't pay a lot, but right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a way to go.
Okay, there was another question over here. Any other? Oh, well, go ahead.
You haven't talked a lot about webisodes and episodic. You've talked more about shorts and features. So where is the marketplace if there is tending more towards a webisode or episodic?
Okay, the marketplace for episodic webisodes, episodes.
If you're talking about made-for-web series in particular, so putting aside episodic TV for a minute, I think that the commercial market for web series is very unproven. I think that the best advice is to partner with a publisher, online publisher, who might be interested to pay for to commission that work in the first place. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of anyone from a Vice to a Refinery 29 to any number of others. I think that it's really difficult to sell web series once they're made. It's one of those things where you might find it better and easier to have a commissioning conversation before the show is made. Brands also is another potential funder and outlet for that, brand-funded content. I think commercially, if you've made a show, there are a few homes for it, but it's a similar conversation to the shorts point. Potentially Apple, Amazon, YouTube, Vimeo, these types of platforms are your best bet.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I would also add that it can be worth it to be pitching directly to what you perceive to be the home for the eventual series, because so often, a lot of the streaming giants especially, they want to have their hands in everything because they have their metrics of what is going to bring in subscribers. And so, yeah, if you've made something, you can probably find somebody to buy it and some way to monetize it. But if you are coming in with a pitch and you're open to what their version of that pitch is going to be, then it could prove to be a little bit more lucrative for you.
I'll just add that there are a lot of streaming platforms for web series right now that are sort of looking for content, but I would say a lot of them oversell what they actually offer. There isn't much of a subscriber base on a lot of them, and the payouts that they promise are often not delivered on. So I don't think that there is much room to make money in that space right now. That said, if you can find a loyal audience, if you can build an audience, you can get great exposure. I crowdfunded a feature off of a web series that I made in 2013 off of that audience. I don't think I could do that now, but I could do it in 2013. Something that we've seen successful at Seed and Spark, people will put out a pilot that gets like a big fan base, and that's through a lot of work on their part, press outreach and different partners and even festival runs, and then they release the rest of the episodes on our platform. So the fans do have to subscribe to watch the rest, and they do make a nice chunk of money. But it's a lot of work, and there isn't a clear path to success with web series.
I mean, we have a couple of web series that we've taken on. They haven't done exceptionally well. There is starting to be internationally and even domestically interest in shorter content. 6 minutes, 7 minutes. You see that Jeffrey Katzenberg, he bought one of the major short film platforms. There's a couple of international buyers that are interested. I think it really is. I think someone said it. I think you have to find a vein that would work. I think comedy would work, a continual comedic kind of thing where you link it all together, which might, if it's clever enough, it might be able to catch on maybe initially on YouTube and then take it more to a monetization platform.
Okay. We have another question up front there.
Hi, how are you doing? I know that pre-sales have kind of gone the way of the dodo, and so I was just curious if you guys could speak to the nature of how you work with filmmakers early on in the process, because I absolutely agree it's vital to be addressing sales earlier. But if, say, you don't have major talent involved yet, like, what's that relationship like? What happens early for you guys with filmmakers if the movie isn't made yet? Like, how? Maybe you could just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I would guess I'm the best person to answer that to start with. Is that, yeah, for narrative films, we're really not doing any pre-sales anymore, but for documentary films, pre-sales are still pretty relevant. So our business model is that we will typically sign on once a cut exists of the film. We are totally set up for handling pre-sales, and we've done some really great deals. But it's better for us if we can just glide the film into a festival premiere and then take care of the sales. But when we're working in the pre-sale space, we are really considering a lot of the questions that we've answered all tonight. Is the film commercial? Is the film international? Your best pre-sales are going to be international broadcasters. And so are these people that we actually think we could approach with this, whether it's true crime or an international topic or some grotesque look at what America is to outsiders. And so, yeah, we're always super upfront about it. And we would never sign onto a film that we don't think we can handle pre-sales for just to get it before anyone else. But we've had some success with really, I would say, international documentaries where we're able to get those partners on board. We're able to make sure, I would say the most important thing is making sure that all of the rights are kind of protected so that, you're not giving away your film just to make it. And then when it comes time to actually release the film, you don't have any of the rights left, especially with foreign broadcasters. You just want to make sure, like, if Netflix came and wanted to buy your film as an original, you could give them those rights without having to buy too much back. So I would say this sounds like a shameless pitch, but I really do mean this. It's helpful to have a sales agent on board for that kind of thing, just because they can understand what to expect and how to watch your back.
Yeah, even in simply understanding what deliverables are required. I mean, I know filmmakers will sometimes make a deal on their own, and someone wants to buy their film, and they're stymied by the concept of what deliverables are, and that's a lot of reasons why, we exist, you might think that, we don't have a purpose because, we're just someone taking your film and selling it. But the buyer is far more comfortable because we understand the deliverables he needs, we understand the level of negotiation, we understand what he's going to ask for contractually. He doesn't have the time, unless he really loves this film and feels that it has a long-term dollar potential, to really kind of find the deal that works best for every individual filmmaker. He wants it more streamlined. This is just the kind of concept that you face in your regular life. You might come up with a wonderful product, but if you just walk into your average Walmart or to your store and try to sell it, they're going to not buy it from you because they have a distribution chain that it goes through.
I'll just get this last question. Go ahead.
My a project that I had on Amazon. It was a featured film. They preferred to cut it down to a 420-minute episodic. So the question is, it wasn't properly distributed or as well as promoted. They dropped the ball not going to Japan, Germany, and stuff. So the question is, since I ended in September, should I go to another platform and try to remarket it there, or should I just let it?
I mean, that's up to you, and if you think that the story is still worth getting out there, you know, especially right now, once you have all the rights back, you can absolutely... Yeah, you do. Okay. So yeah, if you wanted to submit it to other platforms, there could be, and we get that a lot. Like, we have a lot of films, especially documentaries, that when the filmmakers get their rights back, they then stream with us. They submit for that, and you could absolutely do that. But it's really a matter of if you still want to get it seen. Like, I can speak personally, my first feature, I have no interest in like putting it out there anymore. Where it is where it is, but I don't even want to talk about it anymore, you know? So it's really on you and your bandwidth for it.
There's actually a golden age of second window streaming opportunities now. There really is. You know, AVOD is advertiser-supported VOD, which is basically many of these platforms which are free to the consumer, which is the best price, by the way, and supported by ads, are really bringing a lot of new life to catalog. And so it's definitely worth looking at what the options are. There are literally 10 like major AVOD platforms that I've done deals with in the last 12 months. So it's really an explosion at the moment. It's certainly worth looking.
And in our...
Can I just add also is your film on Amazon through a distributor or yourself? You uploaded it?
We basically went through an aggregator. They uploaded it.
Yeah. So Amazon now, Amazon Video Direct, you can upload it yourself and not have to go through an aggregator. And so that's something I recommend to people at the very least. If you had someone else put your film on Amazon, you were missing out on direct money coming from Amazon, and you can do that now. So at the very least, I recommend doing that, just uploading it yourself so you get the money directly.
Yeah, but once you get past Amazon, you know, the Tubies, the big stars, and a lot of these other, they're just not going to make an individual deal with an individual filmmaker. Not primarily. They might in some cases, but I don't find that to be the case often. In terms of, you know, we since we've been around a long time, we've been around 28 years. You know, older content. You know, you're running now into issues of SD and HD and 4K because some platforms are now telling us they're not going to take any SD anymore. It really depends on the show or the film. I mean, we have a series, for example, called Pioneer Quest. It was on PBS and it was on History Channel, Canada. It's a 9-hour series. It's about two families that go out to the Canadian plains and live as people did in the 1870s. It was made in the year 2000. Its success is astonishing. It's one of our top grossers on Amazon Prime. It's on Hulu. It does amazingly well. So, you know, I'm not going to tell you that every old piece of content that you have has value, but some may. So, you know, for someone who's dealing with a lot of older content, I mean, we're closing a deal today for series from the late 1990s, early 2000s. The Conan series, the Tarzan series that was made that played on syndicated TV, a show called Acapulco Heat. Now, individually, they only have certain value, but if we package them right as, you know, I Love the 90s or something like that, or cult TV or adventure TV or something like that, we think it really has real value. I mean, they've only been on Prime, and we think the Tubi and a lot of the other domestic platforms, and we can create streaming channels out of them, and then really what you would call the third world, you know, places like Africa, where there's real money in Africa, and places like parts of Asia, there's potential there. South America, there's potential there for audiences who haven't seen them, who are looking for something, particularly on an AVOD platform, that you know, that's produced at a higher level, even though it's a little bit older.
Right. In the yes. Yeah.
Do you think with the proliferation of film festivals that has happened, that this is diminishing the importance of film festivals?
Like, in other words, there's too many, you mean?
There's one on every corner.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's hard to say. I guess it all depends on the individual festival. I guess, certain festivals certainly can be very beneficial no matter how many there are, and others, not so much. I would just say it all depends on that particular festival. There's genre festivals, there's niche festivals, there's all different types, and I guess it depends what festival works best for a specific film. That would be my thought.
I think it reflects trends in media and culture more generally, where you're just seeing proliferation of like lower barriers to entry in terms of setting up any kind of a enterprise, film festivals, streaming movies, you name it. And, there's just total saturation of stuff in the world, but there are still important kind of signposts and more useful examples in each of those that you can use to your benefit. So I think it's about the strategy that you bring to it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, not all festivals are created equal, and so you just need to really do your homework and know which ones are worth submitting to and attending, and again, what your goals are and which ones will help you accomplish that. And there are a lot that are just scams, like some are legitimate straight up scams on Film Freeway. Some of them mean well and just aren't very good. Some of them are wonderful for creating conversations and, networking and getting press and all of these different things. And so again, it's just knowing what you want out of a festival and choosing wisely.
Yeah, and I think if you can view them in tiers of, they're the top tier festivals, which says nothing about the festivals that are in the bottom tiers. It just means those are the festivals where deals are going to happen at the festival, or, having those laurels on your poster guarantee that you will have an audience for that festival. And then there's maybe a second tier which are good to support those with. So if you don't yet have a distributor on board, or once you have a distributor on board, they might want to play those festivals to get some built-in markets of fans of the films. And then there might be lower festivals that you're going to be playing to kind of keep the buzz alive, but also to get screening fees if you can. Most festivals that aren't in the top tier can pay screening fees, and it can be a source of income. And then there are lower tier ones that mean well and are probably great for you in terms of connecting with an audience, in terms of just getting eyes on the film and getting to see how people react to it, but aren't going to do much from a sales or distribution point of view. And then there are scams.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll just say in New York, we have so many festivals, and again, some are worthwhile and some others aren't. But I was on the circuit last year with my second feature, and we had some really wonderful screenings at smaller festivals where there's just nothing else that goes on in that city, so everyone comes out for it. So we had just sold out screenings of people who probably would never know that our movie existed otherwise. So there's, even in these lower tiers, there's definitely festivals that are worth looking into. Again, it's just doing your research.
I mean, they said a lot of what needed to be said on that. Obviously everybody wants to get into the Sundance or South by Southwest or Cannes or Toronto. But short of that, it is certainly nice, short of paying a lot in fees and, basically going broke doing that, to get yourself seen in some festivals. Not that if you put together, the East Kentucky Film Festival and the North Carolina Film Festival, whether or not that's really going to help your sales, probably not. But it's just nice to get out there. But they're right. There are certain cities, and I'm thinking of I think the Portland Film Festival, the Oregon Film Festival. There's a film festival in Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. Good-sized cities like that where you're going to play at the main art house there. And it's great if you do festivals locally, that you can get in there and support it, and if they allow you to do that. It'll also help you in seeing how your film is received. It'll help you in maybe your next film, particularly if this is your first one. You'll really learn from that experience, getting the feedback, seeing how audiences react to it, but also don't be taken in totally by it. You have to look at it with a cynical eye. I mean, filmmakers will call me up and say, when we played in, East St. Louis Film Festival, we had 250 people there, but they all paid to be in the one fee to be in the festival, so they're going to see everything. And it doesn't really mean that much to me, but again, festivals have a use. You just obviously have to watch the scam festivals, who are just kind of entry fee situations.
Yeah. I will also add that festivals are a great way to collect email addresses from people who think it's worthwhile to pay for independent film. So you want those emails for, when the film is available on different platforms, you can email those people and tell them to spread the word. You can prove to a distributor that there's an audience for this film, like people came out to see it, and that you have this base of people that may be your amplifiers. I've had people whose emails I collected, 3 years ago at a film festival end up contributing to a crowdfunding campaign for my next project. So really, people physically present are a great way to collect a way to stay in touch with them.
And the last thing I'll say, just following what Christina's saying, I think a lot of it depends on what your goals are as a filmmaker. So I think that, if you're looking to make a distribution deal at a film festival, then a lower tier film festival is most certainly not for you, if that's what you're looking for, to sign a distribution deal right then and there. But let's say you have a horror film and you're looking to simply network with horror fans and other horror filmmakers, then a really cool, small, niche horror film festival could be the way to go for you. So I think it just depends what it is as a filmmaker you're looking for.
And you might even find a buyer there that you're totally unaware of at these niche festivals, sci-fi festivals, horror festivals, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Definitely. So, all right, I want to thank our speakers and thank you all for being here. Thank you, Nick, Graham, Christina, and Art. Thank you all.